Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Stumptown. A great series premiere, a nice way to kind of introduce us into the series. Obviously, this is my first time getting to know this story because I've never read the graphic novel that the series is based on. But because, obviously, the trailers kind of depicted Dex as kind of like a private investigator. It's hard to say just from the beginning. It seems like she wasn't necessarily a private investigator. It's just kind of like she was just going from probably odd job to odd job. Plus, it also seems like she has a bit of a gambling problem. I was thinking immediately it seemed like she was a private investigator, but I think that's something she's eventually going to become. She's probably going to go down that route as the show progresses, especially the way the episode ends. But it's like even the whole her being a Marine and everything, and I was like, whoa, that was her military record and stuff like that. Because I should have figured as much, because the moment that guy came up to her and stuff like that, obviously she kind of tore him apart, being like, I know you're lying, you're just kind of using this as an excuse because you got someone back at a different place, but it's like you're trying to hopefully go to my room or whatever. So it's like, oh, and she even saw that, like I said, his tags didn't match. And it's like, oh, you didn't know this particular language. Like someone who was in the military would obviously know that this specific region, they speak this specific language. So it's like, okay, so it makes sense. And I mean, in all honesty, I think that's so great about this too. Like, I didn't know, because I thought it was just kind of like, she's just kind of like, I mean, I guess because the trailers kind of hint that maybe she's kind of like a bit of a screw up in a certain regard, but now we kind of understand. Because I think in my mind I was probably thinking she was more of an ex-cop turned private investigator type of thing, but it's like no. Basically she, because of her military history, it's a very tragic story actually. Because I like that it obviously blends into the story, because obviously, well, for one. It's awesome to see, Kobe Smulders in this. It's interesting in many different regards, because it's like, well, obviously it's ABC, that's under the Disney umbrella, which is interesting because, obviously she plays Maria Hill in the MCU. And obviously you also know her as, there's the Netflix show, I think it got canceled. It's Friends from College, which I heard good things about. I just had never checked it out. That, and also How I Met Your Mother, where she played... I just had it in the back of my mind. Robin. That's it. Oh, I think so. It's Robin, right? Or am I think so. I might be 100% wrong on that. Jeez. But the interesting thing is, because Jake Johnson's in this, obviously from New Girl, but also it's interesting, kind of like the Marvel connection. It's a little different, but he was in Into the Spider-Verse, where he voiced Peter Parker. I have to put you can't see it, but I'm putting quotes around that. You Into the Spider-Verse, you know what I'm talking about if I'm saying quote Peter Parker, because it's a whole interesting thing with Peter Parker. Regardless, and also it's like, well, that's Sony slash Marvel. That's a Sony thing, not a Marvel thing. But you get what I'm trying to go at. Which even that's kind of a funny statement about the whole Spider-Man thing right now. Obviously, I'm going on a huge tangent, stuff like that. It's just neat, because if you're Jake Johnson's the one who plays her friend Gray. Regardless. So basically, the lady who runs the casino, her name's Sue Lin. She brings, Dexton's like, hey, I need you to find my granddaughter Nina. She's run off. And the moment she references Benny, her dad, I'm like, okay, so there's history there. I was like, I guess he died. And well, we learn more and more as it progresses, but obviously there's a little bit of bad blood, because it kind of you can tell it bothered her heavily the moment Sulin said that, Dex was like she almost had to bite her tongue, And I think that speaks volumes about her character. Is the fact is, Dex didn't fight back, in the sense that she's just kind of she took the punches, essentially, in that regard. And it's actually kind of sad, but it's just kind of you've done enough to this family and whatnot, so. Dex is trying to look for Nina, which she went to visit Nina's friend. I was like, I'm a cop. It's like, no, you're not. And then I love that she just does it I love, because she is such an amateur. She isn't some well-trained professional, it's not oh yeah, she's so put together and she's all on top of all of this. It's no, she kind of stumbles her way through it, which I like that. The fact is, she pretends she drives away, the friend calls Nina, and she just comes running up behind her and snatches the phone. I'm like, that's so... No one wouldn't do that, so I love that. I always like cold opens where it's you have like you start here. Literally, they kind of started at the end, and then it's like, 3 days. Or like, I also love, and I think it's such a neat element in this too. I hope they kind of use it more too. Is how music plays a role, because like the cassette tape's stuck in a radio, like it kicks in the weirdest times, but the music is so appropriate to the point like sometimes even she has to like kind of sigh, because it's like it's a sign or something, So I like that. But basically Nina had run off with her boyfriend. They were going to elope and everything, which Nina had brought up. The fact is, it's like, you out of anyone would understand, like, obviously because between her and Benny, between, Dex and Benny, it's like, you and my dad, like, kind of, she herself is trying to understand, like, what exactly went down, but obviously that's not something Dex is wanting to talk about, and in that moment, the two dudes show up, knock her out, and kidnap Nina, and it's like, okay, so what's this about? Well, it turns out, which is interesting, it's such a small, like, Sulin has connections to criminal. I guess it's that thing of like, as long as we have this like mutual understanding, I'll kind of do work with criminals and stuff like that, until she found, apparently, like, I mean, the question then becomes like, how much of it was BS and how much of it is true that she does she really have, well, because she apparently, like, Baxter was transporting like opioids. Sulin found out and burned his supply, because it's like, we're not going to bring, I'm not going to be mixed up in that. Like, I guess some criminal stuff is okay. Like, maybe he helps her in certain regards. But it was just such an interesting storyline that he never dived too deeply into. Maybe that'll kind of circle back around in the future, but nevertheless. So it's like, Dex is kind of being shut down by the fact is she tried to help and everything kind of blew up in her face. She gets arrested by Hoffman, played by Michael Ealy, which is like, yo, Michael Ealy. I only know this because like it's one of my mom's shows that she really likes. I know he was in Sleeper Cell. I'm not that familiar with the show. Like I said, I only know because my mom's was a big fan of the show. A multitude of movies, like Michael Ealy's just one of those actors, like, oh dude, you see him everywhere in many different shapes and forms across different things, but regardless, it's pretty dope to see him in this. And it's like, the reason why I love that whole thing of like, why do people say like go down to the station when the station's up, and he arrests her because it's like all these unpaid parking tickets, it's actually a warrant out for you, so let's go up to the police station, being all cheeky. But it's actually kind of sad because like his boss basically rips into Dex, being like, oh, the fact is, that's what happens when you get amateurs mixed up in all this, because they make amateur mistakes. Because like I said, I was under the impression she was a private investigator. It's like, no, we're not Jessica Jonesing it up, where it's like, even though Jessica's a bit of a mess in certain regards because of her past, she's actually really, really good at what she does. Dex is legitimately an amateur in this. It's like, they were able to find Nina because they were literally following you to her. Well, that was the thought process later on, and it's kind of like, well, that might not necessarily, it's 100% not the case, but we'll kind of get to that soon enough. But obviously Dax is meeting with Baxter. I even love him being like, oh, did you guys hear that joke she did, the thing about the second bra, because it's her second best bra? I love that he's like explaining the jokes, and even she's kind of like, okay, and he's like, all right. So he takes her to the car, and I'm like, wait, this is about a car? So it's like, wait, what? What's going on here? Because I thought like, oh, maybe she's in a trunk or something. I thought Nina was in a trunk, but it's like, wait, so Baxter has nothing to do with this. I'm surprised that didn't turn into a bigger thing. And like I said, that could be something that circles back around, but the fact of the matter is, like, Dex did just drive off with the car that he was trying to make a deal with, and he's like, someone please tell me that didn't just happen. Please someone tell me. And it's like, yeah, that just happened. Some crazy random lady just stole the car that you were trying to sell for like a whole bunch of money. So that was interesting. But then it's like, hey, Sulin, it's like, it's all okay, you don't have to worry about it, she's been returned. But then in the grand scheme of things, you kind of find out, well, because at first, Dex goes to meet with Sulin she wants to talk to Nina about everything, but then Sulin is like, don't you think this family's kind of been through, haven't you put her through enough? And it's like, ugh, that's just like I said, it just seemed like she sticks the dagger in and kind of twisted it a little bit. And obviously, like, that kind of set Dex off. She's, like, calling random people, trying to get, like, it seems like she has a lot of one-night stands, because she ran into the dude, his name's Todd, but she called him Ted or something like that, and, so it's that thing of, and even Grace says it later on, you have PTSD, but she doesn't want to acknowledge it. It's just, I think it's not the easiest thing to admit. Like, it all came flooding back because, like, you know, interacting with his family and stuff like that. I'm sure she's probably avoided being around them too much because she wasn't very welcome. That's the whole point. And that's the added tragedy to the whole story. It's like the man she was in love with, like, it was almost like a Romeo and Juliet thing because of family. Like, they couldn't be together. And so obviously he eventually went off and married someone else. I mean, obviously, like, you know, Dex ends up having her one night stand with Hoffman, which was interesting. Kind of go in the flow of things. But nevertheless, he ended up kind of figuring it out because for him, it's like, we needed to find out what part you had to fit in all of this. And it turns out, like, obviously, like, Hoffman says, like, you know, Benny had married her. Well, not married her, wanted to, but the family... Well, no, it was something she reveals later on, but, like, they were together, but the family kind of split them up. But he was happily married at that point in time, but he left her, and I'm assuming that's Nina's mom. He left behind his business and whatnot. He went into the military. He had leave, but he went somewhere else. He went specifically to where Dex was because he was going to propose to her and ended up handing an IED and ended up dying instantly. And it's like, that's why the family is so hard on her, because it's like, if it wasn't for you, he wouldn't have done all that. But it's like, he followed his heart. It's like, that's the woman he loved. Because like I said, later on, Dex points it out because she tries to give the ring to Michael to be like, you know, because it was the ring that he was bringing to her to propose to her. It's like, you know, it's like, you can't buy a ring for her right now. So here, the fact is, I let the family get in the way. Because it's like, he was going to propose before until his family kind of got in the way and kind of convinced him not to. So it's like, Dex didn't want the kid to, like, you know, make the same mistake she did. Well, let the same mistake that happened with them happen to her between the kid, you know, what's his name, Michael and Nina. So... But then we get that twist where it's like, nope, he's behind everything too. He's because at first, my initial thought was like, okay, like, because even like Dex was like, yeah, something's definitely up here, because like the fact is, Sulin would be, she even said it herself, she will chop off their fingers and put them in a box themselves if they did something to her granddaughter. But it's like, she won't let anyone see Nina. Like, you think, I was like, so that's why my mind initially was like, is she behind the kidnapping? But why would she do that? Was it some long extended way to kind of get around it? But it's like, no, her boyfriend was involved in all of this. The question then becomes like, at what point was the whole dating her and getting close to her, trying to pull her away from her family, was set up for this in the beginning? So it's like, oh, she's away from her family, because otherwise she'd be pretty hard to get. Just kidnap her and then ransom her. Obviously, Dex ends up taking down the other two, and ends up racing to the scene where it's like the exchange is about to happen. And, you know, it's kind of a sad situation, because at the end of the day, you're like, they never explain like why that was the case, but I'm sure it's like they were casing her for a while. It's like, oh, we know Sulin's got money, so let's do this. So it's sad that, I'm sure like he never really loved Nina, so it's like, oh, that's kind of sad to kind of end up being used in all of that, you know. So I mean, but luckily when it was all said and done, everything did luckily have, you know, a good ending. It's like, yeah, like I said, Dex kind of, you know, she stumbled her way through everything, but in the end, she stumbled her way to kind of a happy ending in this regard. You know, I think it's led to some relieving of the tension between Dex and Sulin, you know, so, because even Hoffman had been like, you most likely, your need to save Nina, you were hoping it would kind of like make up for Benny's death, which I 100%, looks like that's not on her, but it's like, no matter what you say, it's always in her mind, it's always going to be like, hey, I'm the reason this went down. I mean, that's like the biggest part of her PTSD. I mean, who knows what else in her military history like might have led to that too, but I'm sure that's the biggest thing, especially being around this family, being around Nina, which is you know, Sulin, obviously that's Benny's mom, but that's Benny's daughter, so it's like, it's a constant reminder. Like I said, I'm curious like how much time she's actually spent around the family since everything went down, because she's probably been ostracized by them. But I mean, to be fair, she does already owe them like $11,000 at the beginning. So I mean, to be fair, she's at the casino, but that doesn't doesn't necessarily mean she interacts with the family like every once in a while, but it's probably super casual because any chance they get, they probably throw the whole Benny thing in her face, you know? So there's that. I didn't talk about it, but it is neat to kind of see the whole element about her and her brother. Like the fact is, she's looking out for him, and I think it's very sweet that he's kind of there to kind of pick her up. When you can obviously tell when she's down, and he's trying to be there to kind of pick her up. And I'm curious, like, because the parents haven't come up in conversation, so the thing is, like, has she been taking care of her brother for a long time? Like, how long has it been? Well, because, like, it's been a while for her military history. Like, the whole Benny thing, like, that was a while ago. Didn't they say it was, like, 10 years or something like that? Maybe I'm BSing, but I could have sworn it was something like that. They had, like, a number they had thrown out there, so I thought it was, interesting at the end where it's like, okay, you have Hoffman offering her, like, hey, call this friend of mine. He can kind of hook you up with give you, people who need help. And sometimes the police aren't really within the scope of being able to do something. Someone kind of like an outsider like you potentially could. So I'm wondering, is it going to be like, is she going to be a private investigator that works for some? Well, it's more so probably like, oh, this is someone who needs help, get in contact with. So it's like, is that going to be like the next episode, or is that going to be like a job we won't get to see, but it kind of spirals to her being like, hey, I'm here, I'm a private investigator now. Is she even going to go that far to get a license and stuff like that? So I'm sure she's going to have a very interesting relationship with the cops going forward with this whole situation. So I'm curious also where her and Grace stand, because it seems like a very like platonic friendship and everything, especially things between her and Hoffman have kind of kicked up. But I mean, it's like, who knows if that's ever going to be anything. And like I said, probably after the whole Benny thing, it's been a string of one night stands, just because it's like, there are just moments you don't want to be alone, especially when she's probably thinking about Benny. And it's like, I mean, who knows if she's been in a like long-term committed relationship since then. Like, the man you love coming to propose to you, dying kind of in front of you, is enough to kind of steer you away from anything too serious. But yeah, I even love that Gray's bar is called No Alibi. I'm like, that's a nice touch as well. So I'm very interested in the show. I'm very interested. Like, obviously, I feel like this episode had a little bit of comedy, but like I said, it was like a very like nice introduction to show like, nah, Dex has a tragic past, and so diving into that potentially forward, I'm sure there's a lot more. Like, there's a lot more than just that slice of her life that I'm sure we're going to deal with, and just her way of going forward and helping people. I'm curious to kind of dive into these characters and kind of get to know them going forward, and just see what the show has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.